Welcome to Unit 5, Shadows over the Pacific, Imperialism in China and Japan. Now, I want to assure you that this unit will not be nearly as long as the last unit. I want to apologize for how long Unit 4 was, and I can assure you on my word of honor that Unit 4 will be the longest unit that you will have to sit through in this class. Because the videos I simply could not make any shorter. I do have friends and colleagues that make their videos very, very short, and I try to do that too. I go a slightly different route. They try to make, say, 20 videos that are 5 minutes long. I do maybe 5 videos that are 20 minutes or 30 minutes long, even though I actually shoot for about 10 to 15 minutes. The problem is that there's a lot of information. And while I am trying to make this class swifter, sometimes certain topics simply cannot be trimmed. And when I'm presented with that decision, do I go for more or less? Sometimes I do take the road that leads me towards less. In some cases, though, I go the other way. Unit 4 is a prime example of me going the other way. It was very, very long because I consider Unit 4 to be kind of the capstone of a 3-part trilogy, where you had in the second unit of the course, the first real unit on material here. We had a unit on industrialism, then we had a unit on social Darwinism, then we had a unit on imperialism, more or less around the world. And we talked about how all of those things, social Darwinism, laissez-faire capitalism, industrial capitalism, the search for raw materials, the search for new markets, the desire to conquer and lord over the world, and how all of that works together. And it was simply too much stuff to ignore. In particular, what I did that was a little bit different than most of my friends and colleagues would leave out is that role, that very important role of technology. And I think all of you will agree that it was a necessity to talk about that. The improvement of weapons, of iron ships and steel ships, railroad technology, telegraph technology, and medicine that enabled continents like Africa and large swaths of Asia to be carved up by Europeans who really before that were not able to do anything even close to that. And then those driving desires of masculinity and the desire to fight, to prove one's masculinity and strength, and the importance of the great race of the world to lord and command the lesser races. In some cases, they would argue to help them. In other cases, simply because it's their right and their duty to do so. So I really did not feel comfortable cutting much from that. Like I said, you can do it in shorter bursts, but at the end of the day, I really do want you to take something out of it. And while I want you to learn skills and learn some material, at times I just have to say, you know what, they're going to get the full dose. And I need to give you all of this simply because, feel free, go back and look at it again. If you couldn't get through every single moment of it, go back and look at it again, because I think some of this information is very important, and just have access to it, have it on the record. I also get kind of carried away with my passion for some of these topics. And that one in particular was always interesting to me because I love how you can take these different threads that seem very different from each other, like industrialism and capitalism and imperialism and racial superiority, and weave them all together to see how they work in concert with one another. And that's the part of history that really does capture my attention. This week, we're only going to be looking at China and Japan. Now, we will be looking a lot at China and Japan. We'll be looking at them before Europeans arrive and begin to lord over them. And we will look at the different roads they take. Japan, over here. Oh, where's my pointer? Japan, over here, is going to go in a very different route from China, and for various reasons. And towards the end of this unit, we will see Japan and China in two different places. One, becoming an imperialist power itself, and the other becoming a colonial possession carved up and dominated by the various Western European empires and this newcomer, Japan, which, although is not a Western European empire, is becoming more and more like one as the years go by. We will be watching 2 videos. They are lectures on China and Japan. Those will really compensate this lecture for this week. My videos, for the most part, will be very short. I think altogether about no more for the entire lecture, probably about an hour at the absolute most. So probably between 40 to 50 minutes worth of lecture material. So this is much shorter than the previous unit considerably, where I think I had about 2 hours worth of information. And like I said, that was the longest lecture you'll be listening to. I'd like to take a moment, though, just to expand this lecture, just to go beyond this a little bit more, to kind of look ahead. I'm going to go over to my modules here. Now you can see all of this on your syllabus. But as you go down in your syllabus, you can't see what I'm showing you here right now. You'll see that as we go through into where are we? Oh, here we go. World War I. The soldier's experience of World War I. I kind of have that divided. You'll see there's a lot of things here, but these are mostly videos, and the readings are not nearly as long. And the lecture for this week will be long, although not as long as Unit 4. But this week, I'll only have one short video, and everything else is simply just what you're watching and reading here, because we will have gotten everything else from here. When we get into lectures further down, for example, the Second World War, you'll see there's a lot of readings here. My lectures will be a little bit shorter. I will give you a broad overview that will go in conjunction with the crash course videos. And I'll discuss, for the most part, kind of what happens during World War II, although most of us probably already know what happens. Mainly, though, I want you to focus on these readings, on how World War II starts and the justifications for it. So my lectures, again, will not be as long as they were for Unit 4. Our Crimes Against Humanity lecture will also not be particularly long, because the details are self-explanatory in these readings here, and these readings are not particularly long. Some of them are. The New York Times article is quite long, but really these are very short, but they are very brutal to read. Just wanted to point that out. And most of these for this week, our week on memory and narrative, are videos. Most of these are all videos, and they're not particularly long to watch. So while some of these weeks look daunting and large, my lectures will be much more nimble and smaller, because in these cases, you would have already learned a lot about this material, and the readings are going to guide us more and more. So Unit 4 really was the peak. Where the heck am I? Unit 4 really was the peak of our lecture in lecture length, in terms of its perhaps its overbearingness. So let us talk about this week. So this is just the introductory video, just kind of tying up some loose ends, explaining a few things. As always, I want you to copy down the outline, specifically paying very close attention to the terms for this week. You'll see over here the big question, and you'll notice that this week the big question, go away. There we go. You'll notice that the big question here is the same as the main question for the discussion board. So this lines up a lot with greater ease. I will also pose another big question in this lecture. It will be a second big question. I'm not putting it on this screen yet. It will be a picture question. You'll look at a picture, and I'll have in the caption a question related to that. I want you to address that in your discussion board, because I think it will be very interesting to hear what the responses are. So again, copy the terms, take notes, enjoy the videos, and before you go into the main lecture videos, I want you to watch the accompanying videos for this week, which, if you look over in our module, our videos for this week will be this video on imperialism in China and imperialism in Japan. So I want you to watch those first, and then move on to the next videos, which will be my lectures, which will fill in some of those gaps and carry the ideas and themes forward. So without further ado, let us move on to Unit 5.